What's up guys, my name is Ace, and one of the big complaints with Call of Duty Vanguard has always been the lack of factions. Where in multiplayer, instead of having allies versus Axis for instance in a World War II themed shooter, we have my team versus enemy team. And with this, you could be literally fighting your twin or one of your teammates' twins in the game that looks literally identical to your teammate or yourself. And since Vanguard is the most recent Call of Duty game that launched, a lot of people are concerned that this is how it's going to be going forward in Modern Warfare 2 and even beyond that, because on the publisher side of things, this may actually be beneficial to their post-launch revenue by not having factions, because this theoretically makes operator bundles more attractive for people to buy, knowing that they're going to be able to use that exact same operator in every single match that they play, regardless of which side of the map they spawn on. Because when you have factions, if you spawn on one side of the map, you're going to be the operator of your choice from that faction, whereas on the other side of the map, you're going to be your operator of choice from the other faction. And another thing to mention with that is I think something that was actually fairly popular and well liked about the operators in Vanguard is the fact that we had an extra layer of progression by being able to progress through those operators. And also another feature that I personally liked, and I know a lot of other people liked it as well, is many of the operators have a favorite weapon where if you use that combination of that operator with that particular weapon, you will get a little bit of bonus weapon XP. And with both of those systems, it does start to become complicated if you separate them into factions, because let's just say you want to work on one particular operator or one particular weapon that you want to level up, but you have no control over which side of the map you're spawning on, and therefore it's a 50-50 chance of you actually using that operator or favorite weapon combo that you actively want to be working on. So all of this combined does have people concerned that there won't be factions in Modern Warfare 2, just like in Vanguard. And while we have no official confirmation either way on this, we don't know if factions are going to be coming, there is a decent amount of evidence that we will be seeing factions return, just like we had in Modern Warfare 2019. And this evidence is seen throughout the reveal trailer for Modern Warfare 2, as well as that campaign gameplay they shared with Modern Warfare 2. In this, if you go through frame by frame, you can actually see several faction-related patches that correspond with the factions and sub-factions that we saw in Modern Warfare 2019. So for example, right here, that is clearly the Demon Dogs patch that we saw in Modern Warfare 2019. It's exactly the same. And this one does show up several times in promotional images, as well as the reveal trailer and campaign gameplay we've seen. So Demon Dogs is effectively confirmed to be in the game, at least in the campaign. But on top of this, we also see several instances of the Shadow Company patch being on many of the players, so it looks like that's going to be returning as a sub-faction as well. Also, there's tons of SAS patches that we see all over the place in these gameplays, and that was another sub-faction we saw in Modern Warfare 2019. But then finally, on the new operator that they added to Task Force 141, this is Vargas, you can see some sort of a patch likely referring to the Mexican Special Forces that he is confirmed to be coming from. So that could perhaps be yet another sub-faction that's in the game. Now obviously all of this stuff is just coming from the campaign side of things, and it doesn't necessarily confirm that we're going to be seeing factions and sub-factions in multiplayer, but I do think it is a pretty good sign that things are pointing in that direction at least. It looks like they have taken the time to clearly distinguish between different sub-factions and campaign, and so I do feel fairly confident they would carry that over to multiplayer, especially after the overwhelmingly negative response to the lack of factions in Call of Duty Vanguard. That created plenty of issues in game, the first one being just that lack of groundedness or immersion, which for many people they don't really care about this, but for others that's a big deal to them. It's really weird to be in a World War II environment and not have Axis versus allies or even good guys versus bad guys, and instead it's good guys versus good guys with everyone looking literally identical. But even if you don't care about that, on the gameplay side of things, this also introduces a lot of issues, and the main one here is the lack of the ability to immediately identify friend versus foe without any heads-up display elements. So just by looking at the character model, in Vanguard there's no way of really knowing if that's a friend or a foe until you see a heads-up display element to confirm that, which especially in hardcore game modes, that can create some pretty big issues. But even in core, it can often be enough where you just hesitate for that brief moment, and that brief moment is what gets you killed. I've run into so many situations in Vanguard where I'll see a character model in front of me, But I see a friendly name tag above their head, and I recognize that character skin as one of my teammates from earlier in that match, so obviously I don't shoot at that target, but then that person kills me, and then I realize that name tag I saw was actually from my teammate that's across the map, who just happened to line up perfectly with this enemy character model. Or another situation I run into from time to time in Vanguard is I see my teammate, I recognize his operator as well as character skin that he's using, he exits my field of view for a few seconds, and then just a few seconds later, that exact same character model re-enters my field of view, and of course my immediate reaction to that is don't shoot. That's clearly a teammate. He was a teammate 3 seconds ago. Why wouldn't he still be a teammate? But it turns out that's actually an enemy using the exact same skin as my teammate. So that's the main reason I really hope we see factions return to Modern Warfare, because as you play through a match, whether consciously or unconsciously, you do start to recognize, at least for that particular match, this guy's on my team, so if I see this guy again throughout this match, I don't need to shoot at him. Whereas then you also start to recognize enemy player skins, and it's like, hey, if I see this character model, I shoot at it. I don't need to see a name tag. I don't need to hesitate at all. If I see it, I shoot it. Now, on top of this, another minor thing that I'd like to see with different factions, assuming they are returning, I'd love to see different announcers in the background depending on which faction you're on. Instead of just having one universal announcer in the background telling me about like when we're losing an objective, for instance, or when an enemy calls in a streak, whatever it might be, I'd love to see them return to having multiple announcers depending on the side that you're on. So if I'm playing as a Spetsnaz operator, for instance, I'd love to hear an announcer with a Russian accent, so it just further reinforces that idea as I'm playing through the match. If I hear that Russian accent as my announcer, any players that I see in the match that aren't on the Russian side, I just instinctively know to shoot at those players. Those are the enemies, without having to rely on a heads-up display element. And I also feel like having multiple operators like this just adds a little more variety to things, and it also just fits in with the theme and the tone a lot better as well. Now, unfortunately, this leaves us with operator levels and favorite weapons with operators. These are both features that I would love to see return, but like I said earlier, it becomes a little bit difficult to handle a system like this if you have zero control over which side of the map you're going to be spawning in on. I guess when it comes to the operator levels, it probably wouldn't matter too much because you select which operator you want to use for each side, and you can always just be working on 2 operators at any given time, one from the Allegiance side, one from the Coalition side. And while it would kind of suck that you can't just focus on one operator and just level that one operator up non-stop game after game, with this system, you're still able to focus on one operator from each side, so it is going to end up being a bit 50-50. You get to work on the Allegiance operator when you spawn on the Allegiance side, and then you work on the Coalition operator when you spawn on the Coalition side. So I guess that's not really a huge issue, but the favorite weapon idea, I think that could potentially be a little bit more challenging to balance while having multiple factions. But honestly, as much as I like that little feature, I'd totally be willing to give this up just to have factions back again, or perhaps they could come up with a new idea around that where you can still have a favorite weapon for an operator somehow and still make it work while having 2 opposing factions that you choose from. In either case, that's pretty much all I've got to say on this topic at this point. Like I said, really hoping factions do return, and it does seem likely based on what we've seen so far, as well as based on the massive negative response from Vanguard. But this is where I want to hear from you guys. First up, do you think we will be seeing different factions in Modern Warfare 2, unlike Vanguard, where it's just my team versus enemy team? And then second, what are your thoughts on this whole different factions conversation? Does it really matter to you in Call of Duty Vanguard that it's my team versus enemy team and you can use whatever operator you want no matter which side of the map you spawn on? Or do you prefer the older system where you do have different factions and you only get to use the operator for that side of the map that you spawn on? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.